Lesson 3 is about the percent proportion, and in Chapter 1 we learned what a proportion is. And remember, when we talked about proportion before, it was with proportional. Proportional meant that ratios were equal to each other. So here we'll have two ratios in the form of a fraction that are equal to each other. This could be something like 4/5 and 8/10. Those are equal to each other. This one, if you would simplify, it's equal to that one. So that's set up where you have two ratios that are equal, or two fractions that are equal. That is a proportion. Now, when we talk about today a percent proportion, one of those spots will be filled with a percent. And for 2-1, we talked about how to change a percent into a fraction. And remember, if you have something like 30%, it would just be 30 over 100, because percents are always out of 100. So if you had 84%, it would be 84 over 100. If you had 0.6%, it would be 0.6 over 100. So the way the percents or the proportion is set up for percent proportions are that you always have, and I always put it on the right side. It doesn't matter if it's on the right or the left, but I try to keep mine the same all the time. So on this side, it's always the percent. Since a percent is always out of 100, I put that right here. And this is where my percent goes. So if it was 84%, I would put 84 on the top. Then on the other side, it's always the part over the whole. And you might want to think of the whole as the total amount. That means the same thing, the part over the total or the part over the whole. And I'm going to give you some clue words for this. Now, these do not always work, okay? Especially for story problems, you'll have to read more carefully. But for these first examples that we're going to do, and for the first part of the homework, part, the clue word is, whole, the clue word is of. And you're going to see how that works in a second. But this is always the setup. And once you have that, then you would do your cross products and then solve for the variable, and you have your answer. So the first one, what percent of 60 is 15? So I'm going to go ahead and set up my empty proportion, and I know that bottom number is always going to be 100 because it's a percent proportion. Here it says what percent? We don't know what it is. We're not sure. It doesn't tell us. Since we're not sure, whenever you don't know, you put a variable. And the percent goes over 100, so x over 100. Then it says what percent of 60? Of is our clue word for the whole. So 60 is our whole. And it is 15. Is the clue word is for the part. So that goes on the top. What percent of 60 is 15? 15 is the part, 60 is the whole, and we're trying to find the percent. From here, you do your cross products. 60 times x is 60x. 15 times 100 is 1,500. Set them equal to each other because cross products are always equal. And then you would solve by dividing by that coefficient. So divide by 60, divide by 60. X equals 25. And since we are trying to find a percent, what percent? It'd be 25% is our answer. Okay? 25% is the answer. The next one, again, setting it up. Put in your empty proportion with the 100 since it's a percent proportion. What number is 15%? Now, anytime you see the percent symbol, it doesn't matter if the word is or of is right next to it. If you see that percent symbol, You know that number goes over 100. That's our percent, over 100. Now we have of 60, and what number is? Well, what number is 15%? Well, if the number is only 15%, it's not the entire thing. If it was the entire thing, it'd be 100%. So what number is 15% tells us that's the part. Part goes on the top. Of 60, that's the whole thing we're looking at. 15% of 60. 60 is the whole. And then again, cross products. 100 times x is 100x. 60 times 15 is 900. Set them equal. Cross products are always equal. Divide by the coefficient. And x equals 9. So 9 is 15% of 60. The rest are the exact same thing. It's just worded a little bit different, and maybe our variable will be in different spots. Anytime it's a percent proportion, you know that 100 goes in there. If it's not talking about a percent, do not put the 100 in there. Just set up the proportion like normal. So again, we see our percent. That should be okay. I know that one right away. That goes there. Now my 9. It says 9 is 12%. Well, if it's only 12%, that's part of it. So that's our part. 9 goes on the top. Of which number? The of clues me in that that's the whole. It would go on the bottom. Cross products. You would get 9 times 100 is 900. 12 times x is 12x. Divide by that coefficient. And notice I'm showing it different ways. You can show this way or you can show that way. And 12 divided by 12 gives you a 1, so it would be just 1x, or we write it just x equals 75. And the very last one that we're going to look at, 12% of 72 is what number? Percent over 100 of 72. 12% of 72. So we're finding 12% of that number. So that's the whole thing. Is what number? Tells us that's where our variable goes. You'd have 100x equals 72 times 12. 864. Divide by 100, divide by 100, and you would get 8.64. 8.64. Now you will have to work on some story problems with this, and so the clue words is and of are not going to quite work. In that case, you're just going to have to read it and really think about, okay, which number is part of what I'm talking about? Which number is the entire thing? Like in your workbook, the very last example on this, I think it's page 124, it talks about part of what the gorilla eats in the day is the fruit, but he eats more than that. So that when they ask for how much he eats in the day, they're talking about everything, not just the fruit. So the fruit is the part of what he eats, but they wanted the total amount that he eats then, which is the whole. So you really have to think that through about what they're talking about in the story problem, what's the part and what's the whole.